Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Marc. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Marc, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I'm very excited about this show. We are going to discuss how to become a successful consultant with our guest, Matt Inglot. Matt went from making $300 as a technician to now being a consultant who gets $20,000 clients. It is my pleasure to welcome Matt to the show.
Hey, Marc. Very happy to be here, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you, Matt. It's great that you were able to make the time for this episode to happen. My first question for you, I always like to start with the why. So why did you become a consultant?
So there's two answers to that question. One was very practical, which is that I needed money. I was in university. I had just lost my part-time job working at an amazing startup. Basically, they ran out of money, which startups often do. And I suddenly found myself needing to pay tuition and housing and all of that fun stuff and not actually having an income stream, which is a problem. So I knew how to build websites, and I decided that rather than getting kind of a typical job at a coffee shop or something, I should try building websites for people. And I did, and that's basically how I started. I built a website for $300, and then I built my next one for a little more, I think $700, and I kind of kept working my way up. But the other side of a question is, well, why am I still doing this 10 years later? And the reason for that comes back to freedom. And what I discovered about myself on this 10-year journey is that above pretty much anything else in life, I really optimize for freedom. I really like the fact that I can work from anywhere. I like the fact that I can work from home. I'm sitting in my home office right now as we chat. I don't have a commute to work. And I have a lot of freedom over how I want to structure my schedule. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done, but I have flexibility over when I start work. I can start really early in the morning if I want to. I can start really late. And I can choose to work on the weekend. I can choose to take a few days off. I have a lot of autonomy over my life. And I also get to pick my clients. So it's the fact that I have a lot of say in how I run my life day to day that's really kept me on this freelancing or consulting route for 10 years instead of doing what a lot of people end up doing and ultimately getting a job.
I know a lot of people right now are salivating over freedom and being able to control your schedule and just also being able to do what you love to do all at the same time. It seems like the perfect thing, but at some point you were not a consultant. You were just looking at it from the rearview mirror, wondering, what's this consulting thing about? So what were you thinking when that path is in front of you and you're just getting started out?
When I was just getting started out, I didn't quite know where it would go, but I did have pretty big dreams because I grew up in Waterloo, Ontario, which is basically Canada's little miniature Silicon Valley. That's where all the startups are and a ton of innovation. So one of the things that was drilled into my head was that success meant running a big business. I no longer believe that. I mean, that's one path to success, but that was kind of the general culture and mentality. Get funding, get big fast, growth over profit, you know, all of that typical fun startup stuff. So I definitely had that mentality in me, meaning that as soon as I decided to start a website development business, there was a part of me that said, okay, well, it's got to be a big business. And that led me to make some interesting decisions, such as hiring full-time employees pretty quickly. I was super ambitious, opening an office, then opening a bigger office, and just really trying to grow this big thing. But the problem is, and this kind of comes back to your question, is I didn't really understand the end goal for any of this. I didn't understand what I really wanted out of my business. I didn't understand how I wanted my own life to look like. I didn't understand what I really wanted my business to look like beyond big. It was all kind of very murky. So what ended up happening was, because I lacked this focus, because I didn't really think about the path ahead, I ended up making decisions that didn't really fit well with my personality and what I ended up realizing I wanted out of life. And so at some point in 2011, everything kind of came to a grinding halt. And I realized I can't do this anymore. I can't go into the office every day. I can't keep growing the team. I can't keep being on this treadmill of trying to grow this crazy business because I wasn't enjoying any of it. So that's where I kind of really smartened up and said, okay, what do I want? And that's where I realized that freedom's really important to me, flexibility is really important to me, and that's where I kind of rebuilt my entire business from having office and full-time employees and all that stuff to being a lot more agile, completely remote, location independent. And while I still have people working for me, it's primarily contractors and part-time employees. And now I optimize my business for freedom. So going back to your question at the beginning, I honestly had no idea what any of this foretold. I just knew I had to get big, and that ended up being a mistake.
It's interesting that you got a big business, but then you switched over to something else. Usually when I hear about people switching over to new things, it's switching from the high-paying job or getting laid off and then becoming an intrapreneur. How did it feel to shift from a big business in which you're the owner to this other business that it's just starting out, but at the same time you have more freedom than before?
It felt really good because, first of all, the old model, I was taking me on a path to a big business, but it wasn't a big business yet. It just had all the problems of trying to grow a big business and doing so unsuccessfully. So it was very liberating because in the old model, everything was geared towards growth. So I was on this constant treadmill of having to find the next client and the next client and the next client. And it felt like no matter how many clients I signed on, how much work I did, I always felt stuck because I always needed more. And I needed more in order to keep all of this afloat, because as soon as you stop taking on clients, well, it's a problem because you have payroll to meet, you have office rent to pay, you've got coffee delivery and water delivery and the billion other little expenses that traditional businesses have that add up to a lot. And all of that had to be paid every month. So I was stuck on this treadmill. So honestly, after doing that for a few years, getting rid of the office and eventually kind of transitioning to a more contract-based team, liberating is the word I'd have to go for. It felt really good. And in the end, it ended up actually being a lot more profitable for me. Because again, just because you're bringing in a whole bunch of revenue doesn't mean you're making money. Whereas now, as a much smaller minded business, I actually make more money and I have to do less work, and I have a much better understanding of what are the key things I need to be doing in order to keep this business in a state that's going to create an amazing life for me.
So you've gotten a lot of clients back when you felt like you were on the treadmill. Then you got off the treadmill. You're not getting as many clients, but they're paying you a lot more. Some of them paying you $20,000. How are you able to get those types of clients?
So it was a fundamental mindset shift for me. And even 20,000 is probably our starting point now. A lot of us work we do now is $30,000, $40,000, and it's going to keep growing. So the fundamental shift for me was understanding that people are not hiring us in order to do grunt work, like some sort of skill like HTML or Photoshop or something, right? We're not supposed to be hired as part-time employees. We're supposed to be hired by clients in order to achieve a result for them. So previously, when a prospective client would contact me, they would basically tell me what they want in a website, and I'd say, okay, so what kind of colors do you want? What do you want the homepage to have? How many pages do you want? All of these kind of very technical recipe-based questions, and I was waiting for the client to dictate all of this to me. Nowadays, it's a very different conversation. When a client comes to me and asks for a website, instead of taking down a bunch of specifications from them that we would then execute, now I'm the one asking the questions and I'm the one creating the specifications. So the first thing I want to do is I want to find out from the client, well, why are you getting the website built? What's the underlying business goal that you're trying to achieve? Because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I really need a website just because. There's always something more there. So maybe they're implementing a new online strategy. Maybe they're trying to increase sales. Maybe the website's not serving their existing customers more, but there's always some sort of business problem behind it. And once I understand that business problem, I can turn around and I can advise the client on what we need to do in order to solve that underlying problem. And as long as you take on the clients that have a big problem, meaning that if you solve it, it's worth a lot to them, then you can suddenly start charging a lot more, because that's when you become a consultant, because that's a word you've used a couple times. Being a consultant means being the advisor. It doesn't mean being the part-time employee. It doesn't mean being hired labor. It means being the one that guides the client from a problem to a solution. And that was the big mindset shift for me. And once I shifted that mindset, suddenly I could say, this will cost $20,000 to solve. And a client will say, yes, sign me up, because they realize that, they're going to spend $20,000, but they're going to solve a problem that's costing them way more money. Versus if I simply say, hey, we're going to build you the website you asked for, it's going to cost 20 grand, they're going to faint.
So by knowing your customer, that makes a big difference in how you're able to serve that customer, and it makes it possible to create a long-term relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Once I understand what the client's trying to achieve, I ideally take on clients that I can keep working with and that I can keep helping. So for example, if a client's goal is to sell lots of products online, that's not a one and done solution. We can help you today and we can help you sell a lot more products online. But next year, you're going to want to sell even more products online. And the year after that, you're going to want to sell even more. So there is a fantastic opportunity there to keep working together and keep identifying opportunities that are going to help you sell more online. And that's exactly the kind of client I want. And my focus now is to take on a few of these clients a year and then keep working for them for years to come. I no longer try to come up with crazy numbers of clients. I try to find a few clients that I can have this kind of relationship with year in, year out.
What was your biggest source of motivation that helped you become a successful consultant?
That's a surprisingly tough question. I think it does come back to this idea of freedom, and also this idea that I really wanted to have a successful business, damn it. I think at the end of it, that's something a lot of entrepreneurs want. Maybe every entrepreneur wants, is you want the gratification of having built something that actually works, that actually makes money, that generates profit, that gives you the lifestyle that you want. And I didn't have that right away. I had that at the beginning when I had my early success and I built a few websites and I realized I could get paid for my work. But then I took a path that wasn't working so well. And the thing that kept me going was the fact that I could either admit failure or I could figure out how to make this thing work. And there were points where that wasn't that obvious. There were many nights I spent wondering, at what point do you admit failure and move on and say, hey, I don't know how to do this, versus how long do you kind of stick to it and try to make it work? And I really don't have a hard and fast rule for that. But something in me was just really stubborn, and I really wanted to prove that I could do this. And so I kept revising the business model until it worked.
If you were sitting with a friend and that friend asked you to just talk about all the benefits of being a consultant and all of the enjoyment you've had out of it, what would be on top of that list as the best thing about being a successful consultant?
So it's funny because as we're speaking today, I just published an article titled, "Is Freelancing Right for You?" And it goes into some of the things that I think make a person great for freelancing or ultimately, becoming a consultant versus some of the things that make a person not suitable. And I think one of the things that's amazing with consulting is the fact that you get a lot of autonomy over your life. So you do get to pick your clients. You do get to pick the kind of work that you do. You get to make a lot of decisions. And at the same time, you get to practice your craft. So if, let's say you're really good at baking donuts and you go into business for yourself, well, if you really want this to become a great business, at some point you're going to have to open multiple locations and you're going to have to really grow this. And next thing you know, you're not the one baking donuts anymore. You're the one running a business, right? You're no longer practicing your craft. And that's true with a lot of business models where if you want to take something and kind of productize it, at some point you're not the one doing the work. As a consultant, you still get to be the one doing the work. You still get to be the one practicing and honing your craft, but you get to do it on your own terms. And I think that's really powerful for a certain type of person. So the type of person that doesn't like maybe working at a corporate job and just having to do whatever their boss tells them to do. Because as a consultant, now you get to be the one that determines what gets done, but you still get to work on your craft. You still get to create results for people. You just have a lot more autonomy. But that can also be a big problem if you're not the type of person that enjoys that. If you're the type of person that prefers being told what to do, prefers having someone else lay out the path for you, then this is a terrible option for you, quite frankly, because you're always going to be in the driver's seat. You're always going to be the one having to make the decision every single morning. What needs to be done today? What clients do I pursue? How do I get this result for the client? And if you're the type of person that enjoys that, great. If you're not, it's a problem.
And it also comes down to how you utilize your time, because as an entrepreneur in any type of business, it's up to you how you leverage your time. It's not like someone's telling you when to come into work each day, when to leave each day, and then that's get your wage. So
yeah, and that's exactly the problem.
So that could makes or breaks a lot of potential entrepreneurs, how to use their time.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So there are people listening to this podcast right now. Some of them, they want to become successful consultants. Others want to publish their first Kindle book or drive a certain number of sales, and that would be their breakthrough. What advice do you have for these listeners who are trying to reach their breakthrough?
I think the best advice that I can give you is to sit back for a moment and try to understand why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. And I know that sounds kind of hokey, like, okay, goals and all that stuff, but it's actually really important. If you understand what you want your business to do in your life, how you want your business to fit in, how you want success to actually look like, not just, hey, I want millions of dollars, but really paint a clear picture of success, it becomes a million times easier to work backwards and make decisions in your business, because suddenly you have a goal that you're striving towards, a very clear picture of what you're striving towards. So for example, if you're like me and freedom is really important to you, like a flexible lifestyle, ability to travel and everything, suddenly some business decisions are really good, such as going remote and not having an office, and some business decisions are very bad, such as deciding that you do want to open an office and you do want to hire everybody in the same location. If you don't understand how you want your business to fit in your life, then suddenly any decision is potentially a good decision or a bad decision. You have no way of knowing. And because, as you pointed out, as entrepreneurs, we have a limited amount of time and we have to use that time well, you really want to be looking for the actions that are going to get you to your goal. And that, unfortunately or fortunately, means understanding what that goal is and understanding it very vividly.
You've had a lot of ups and downs on your path to becoming a successful consultant, but now here you are, a successful consultant, getting all of these clients. What are 3 tips that you can provide for us for getting high paying, but also high quality clients?
So the most important thing is you have to find the clients who will benefit a lot from working with you. So as an example, in my business, if I go and I build a website for an online store that's maybe making a couple $1,000,000 a year, and I can help them increase their sales by 10%, then suddenly they're going to be making $200,000 more each year. That's huge. If I go instead and do the same amount of work for, let's say, a very small dog sitting business, just someone working out of their house that maybe makes $50,000 a year, if I go and I do the same amount of work for that person and I increase their sales by 10% a year, that's worth $5,000 a year to them. So you can do the math and understand that the person that's running that online store and who's going to get a $200,000 a year result from me is going to be willing to pay me way, way, way more money than the person that's going to get a $5,000 a year result. And I think that's something a lot of people miss. They see every client as equal, as potentially being business worth winning. Whereas, I mean, the reality is if you can't generate great results for a client, like really valuable results, then you don't deserve to get paid a lot of money. So if you want to be building $20,000 or $40,000 websites or whatever it is that your craft is, if you want to be the one charging premium dollars, you have to be finding the clients that are going to get a ton of value from your work, or you're never going to be able to get paid those sums of money. So that is the absolute biggest, most number one thing. The second thing is once you find those types of clients, you have to speak to them as a consultant and not as an employee. And that means you take charge of the relationship and you take charge of a conversation. You figure out what the goal that the client is trying to achieve is, the actual underlying business goals, such as increasing sales, decreasing expenses, helping the owner spend less time on their business and more on the golf course, whatever it may be. Understand that business goal and then map out a plan for the client on how they can reach that. That is very different than you sitting down and asking the client, well, what do you want? Because the client probably has no clue, or what they think they want is not necessarily going to be the thing that gets them the best result. And you are the expert, you are the advisor, and you have to take charge of that role. And that's where the real money is. Otherwise, you're just another commodity web developer, designer, writer, or so on. Those are a dime a dozen on Upwork. The people that can actually advise and figure out how to get results are the people that are worth a lot of money. So that's the second thing. And you asked for 3. So the third thing I'd say is find clients that you can keep working with rather than kind of a one and done approach. That's been very successful for me. So not only do I find clients that I can deliver great results for, and not only am I the one that's taking charge of that relationship and advising them on what needs to be done, but I'm also looking for clients where I can keep doing that year after year after year, because it is so time consuming and expensive to find new clients. Like just a couple of weeks ago, I had to fly out halfway across the country to sign a new deal. And that was literally fly out on Wednesday, come back on Friday.
That's dedication.
Yeah, it's tiring. And I try not to do that, but it's worth it when I can take on a client that I know I'm probably going to be working with for 4 or 5 years and is probably going to be a 6-figure client for me. Suddenly the cost of a plane ticket is trivial. But yeah, it's a lot of work to take on a client and to onboard them and to figure out if you work well together. So the best thing you can do is find the clients that you can keep working with. And that's how you build a sustainable consultancy and not just feel like you're constantly chasing new clients.
Earlier, you mentioned about turning down the client who's making $50,000 per year. And looking at the math, it makes sense because you're not able to give this person as much money as the person spending for your services. But there are some people thinking, okay, that sounds great, but I need the money to continue my business. How did you get to the point where you're denying these people who you know you can't serve properly and still be fine with the money?
Time, practice, and patience, my friend. So we all have to start somewhere, right? And I have spoken with a lot of successful freelancers on my podcast, Freelance Transformation. And one of the commonalities between all of them is we all started somewhere. And there are a lot of stories similar to mine where that first client was maybe $300 or $700 or whatever it might be. You're not expected to start consulting tomorrow and immediately start making the big bucks. There isn't a career path where you can do that. So it's okay to start somewhere. But the key is to take this advice and apply it to keep going up the ladder. So when you're starting out, if you can get paid a couple $1,000s for work and have money coming in, that's a beautiful thing. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to allow yourself to get stuck at that level, meaning that, first of all, you probably don't want to be spending very much money when you're getting started. Live cheaply so that you have a larger runway so that you don't need as much money coming in to sustain you. And make sure that you don't book yourself so solid that you don't have time to work on your business, because that's a huge mistake people do, is they will try to book 40 hours or 60 hours a week, whatever it may be, and realize that, okay, they have no time to actually figure out a better client acquisition strategy. They have no time to meet new people, new prospective clients, because they're busy with this existing low-paying work. And that's going to put them in a position where they're going to always be getting low-paying work because they don't have time to improve their skills, improve their approach to acquiring clients, and basically grow a business. So it's got to be a split between doing client work and between working on your business. And if you're continuously working on that business, if you're continuously striving for better and better clients, doing a better job of actually creating value for them, then you will hit the 20K to 40K to 200K, whatever your goal may be. The people that don't do it are the people that just sit down and stagnate and just keep doing the same thing over and over.
What is one awesome inspirational quote you could think of right now, and what does it mean to you?
Easy. Reality is Negotiable by Tim Ferriss. And he didn't even write that in his book, 4-Hour Workweek. He wrote it somewhere on one of his blog posts, but it was just 3 simple words that really struck me very hard. And it's that whole idea that we don't have to accept simply what life gives us. We have the power as thinking people to take action and to shape the reality that we live in. And that means to do the work that we want to be doing, to find the clients that we want to be working with, and to not have to ever take no as an answer. If you're stubborn enough, there's a way to get the thing that you want. And it is possible to live the life that you want to live, even if that life is going to be pretty unconventional. Like, for example, when I got rid of my office, it was based on the hypothesis that I don't actually need office space. But it was terrifying because before that, we had a giant sign. We were on a busy street. Pretty much everyone in Newtown knew what Tilted Pixel was. And by getting rid of the office, the scary thing is, 1, would people still find us? And 2, would people work with a company that doesn't have an office? But I knew that that's the reality that I wanted. I didn't want the business of an office. So I pressed on anyway, and I found a way to make it work. And sure enough, it's a little weird, it's a little unconventional, but I run a company that works with clients that has no office space.
Matt, thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast. Before we go, I'm going to give you the spotlight and let all of my listeners know where they can find you on the web.
Sure thing. So 2 things. I mean, you're presumably listening to this on a podcast player. If you are, I would be honored if you subscribe to my podcast, Freelance Transformation. And that is a great show if you're someone that is looking to get into freelancing, into consulting, to find more clients, because I interview people that are successfully living this exact life. And secondly, of course, you can check out freelancetransformation.com. That's where you can get on my email list. I have a free course on how to find your first 3 clients, as well as other freebies for you and tons of articles. So check it out at freelancetransformation.com.
Those links will be within the show notes of this podcast. Matt, thank you for taking the time to be on this episode.
Marc, thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure. That was a great interview. Matt revealed some great insights on getting high-paying clients instead of going after every possible client you can find. It's tempting to go after any potential client and think quantity over quantity, but not all clients are created equal. Some of them are going to be a pain, while you'll enjoy working with others. Having fewer clients who pay you more and who you enjoy working with allows you to focus more of your time on those clients that you do get. And if you say no to the clients who you will dread later, you will be much happier when working. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit markguberti.com/E11 for those. You can ask questions over there, which I'll be happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. 2 ways you could do this are through markguberti.com/iTunes or markguberti.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markguberti.com/retweet. This podcast is a production done by Marc Guberti. For more insights, head on over to markguberti.com.